Okay, so this is the second part of the epilogue. Last week with Kyle, you covered chapter 17 and 18, which is Israel going back into idolatry. I'll have another slide that shows that is kind of the opposite what I had in the prologue. Um, and today, then we're going to cover the rest of the epilogue. I don't actually think we'll get through those three chapters today, which I kind of figured would happen. Whatever we don't get through today, because we'll spend probably a lot of time in chapter 19, we'll cover next week, and next week will just be a summary and review as long with whatever we don't get done today and the rest of the book. Also, in preparation for next week, um, be thinking about what you've learned in Judges. So it's going to be a lot of review, thinking about what lessons we can learn out of it, what stood out to you, what interesting things popped out, what are some things that you never recognized that you did in this study of Judges, all those different things. How you can tie Judges to other stories, to other books of the Bible, all of that. So be thinking along those lines, answering those questions as you prepare for next week. But today we're going to study Judges 19, and we're going to see how we're getting through. Be prepared for depression, I guess. Or this is one of the most graphic chapters in the whole Bible. It is showing the depths of humanity, the evilness of humanity, and what it can go to if you don't have good leaders, God influence in the community. This is where it leads to. And I think it paints a very vivid picture of where that could lead. This is a continuation of the spiral, and we are in the depths of the toilet. That is Judges, the spirituality of the Judges. We have gone through where there were some pretty good judges, and then some okay judges with issues, and then it's just gotten worse and worse till Samson did not have much morals, and then there's not even someone who's even as good as Samson, and everyone is doing what they think is right. Here's the picture that shows the tie between the prologue, the epilogue, and Gideon's story, where they're mirror images of each other. So in the prologue, Israel fights with his enemies, fights with enemies. Here we're going to see in chapter 19 through 21, Israel is going to fight Israel. You have Israel in the second half of the prologue facing idolatry. They destroy idolatry. In the previous part of the epilogue, we saw that Israel forged idolatry. And this is mirror image of Gideon's story that's right in the middle, which this whole story turns on. So it just kind of gives you a perspective. Again, like I've told many times, these are not just a collection of random stories that they had and they threw together. This is a very well thought out book that the author and God has laid before the people of Israel and now before us, so that we can learn the lessons that would have us to learn. So without much further ado, let's jump into the lesson. This is kind of the way we're going to take it today. We're going to spend a lot more time probably in chapter 19 than 20 and 21, but I think that's the big crux of what we should. So chapter 19, 1 through 9. Again, we don't have time to read everything, so I hope you read it beforehand. I hope you meditated on it. Chapter 19, 1 through 9, this is just the section in which the Levite is going after his concubine wife. Remember, concubines don't have the full status of a. They have the status of a wife, but they don't get all the privileges, such as inheritance for their children and things like that. And this concubine left this Levite and went back to her father's house, and then the concubine or the Levite went and went after her to her father's house, and there he stayed for a few days. We'll probably go through this section pretty quickly, but what in these first 9 verses did you see that popped out to you, or did you see that was really interesting? which we'll get to that a little bit more in the next sections. But yeah, definitely, definitely. What else in these first 9 verses, Bob? Yeah, yeah. So I will say on that point. So in verse 2, what do you what translation what does your translation say for verse 2 when it says, "And his concubine was blank to him"? Play the whore. Anyone got anything other than a faithful? Angry, angry with. Um, and I actually think that's the better translation. So the Masoretic text, the text that our Bible's based on, has unfaithful, that kind of stuff. But the older manuscripts, as well as the Greek and Aramaic, have angry, and I think that's probably the better word because it fits more of what is going on with that just makes more sense. This this concubine is not necessarily unfaithful. She just got angry because the Levite was probably treating her well. If the Levite could do the things that he does later, he probably wasn't treating her well before now, and so he got angry and he left. And that's the reason that he would have to go and speak sweetly or kindly or whatever it talks about, and try to win her back. That is part of the reason. So that's my personal opinion. I think it's a better translation is angry. But yeah. What? Yes. Yeah. 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 It's like I'll go get her now. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I'll pose that question to everyone. Why do you think what is going on here with this father-in-law that is over the top insisting that this Levite, his son-in-law, stay, over and over and over again? What are some possible reasons for that? Protect his daughter, love his daughter, want to spend time. Right. So that's a possibility, Mark. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's 100% written in there. So whatever reason the father-in-law has for showing this hospitality, we aren't specifically said why, but I think 100% the writer of this is trying to compare the hospitality that they showed, that the father-in-law showed to the Levite and I guess his daughter, versus what they're going to receive at the next place. I think he's setting them up for that. So I think you're 100% right as that's concerned. Also, how does this story start? What are the first words? There's no king in the land. And this is going to be a continual thing in this epilogue, showing that there is no king in Israel. So, you're kind of being prepared for a king to come onto the surface. I think that's part of the purpose. And then also, why does no one have a name? Did you notice that? No one in any of these stories has a name. It's the Levite, the concubine, the father-in-law. You'll even get to like the men of Gibeah, like the Ephraimite. There's no one has a name. Why do you think that is? Yeah, but usually we have the main character's name or main character, side character. It's usually not no one. But go ahead, Mark. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they would have stayed faithful if they'd actually done, or they had more likely to stay faithful if they didn't have the negative influence if they'd taken that out at the beginning. I think that's definitely part of it. I think also what is the reason for not giving names to um, these characters is that I don't think these are isolated. I think this is a one story that is the writer trying to show through this one story of what Israel is all about. This is how all of Israel is. All of Israel is horrible, basically. And this is what a typical Levite at this time is about. This is how women are typically treated at this time. This is how men of the city are typically at this time. And so I think they're typal characters. They're not just individual characters in which the story takes place, but they're supposed to represent all of Israel. And I think it's part of the reason they're not given a name. And that's kind of usually when people aren't given names in the stories, that's kind of one of the usual reasons to point to, unless they're like a side character or something like that. So I think that's definitely one of the reasons. We're going to have to keep moving on. Another Levite from Ephraim. Do you remember another Levite from Ephraim? What? Abimelech? I don't know. Last chapter we saw another Levite from Ephraim, and what happened in that story? Not good stuff. So as you're reading this, you should have this is not going to go good. Okay, 10 through 21. So this is while they're in the city, and no one takes them in. No one is hospitable to them until this other Ephraimite takes them in. We're not to the point in which the men of the city come up. This is just right before the men of the city come up. We'll cover this pretty quickly. Why did the Levite not want to stay in Jabus? So the men of the city of Jebus, I don't know how you say it, were not Israelites, and he didn't want to be in a foreign land, a foreign city, which is ironic based on what's going to happen. That it would actually been better if they stayed there. Why do you think no one wanted to show them hospitality in Gibeah? Why did no one in Gibeah show them hospitality? I think you're right. Go ahead. Yep. Yes. I think hospitality is one of the first virtues to go in a society. Because to be hospitable, it's a total selfless act. You are not being selfish at all. You're giving your time, your space, your food, everything about it to someone else. And so in a society that is becoming more and more selfish and self-centered, like Israel was at that time, it's no wonder that no one is hospitable, because that is the very first thing to go. And also they may have known what would happen later on as well. Hospitality is something that God very much emphasized, especially in the Old Testament, as well as treating the foreigner and the outsider well. Especially in the laws, he strongly, very strongly says, you do not treat the foreign, the outsider, the widow, the orphan badly. Don't do it, because you were once an orphan, you were once an outsider, you were once a foreigner. You don't treat other people bad. And then you're going to see throughout the prophets, one of the main reasons Israel and Judah are destroyed is because they do treat the foreigner, the outsider, the widow, the orphan badly. That is one of the main reasons, one of the three main reasons in which they are destroyed. And so that is something that he does not take for granted. And then you're going to notice also who actually shows the hospitality. Is it someone from the city that grew up there? Yep, it's a foreigner. It's someone from off that is living there, sojourner, and that actually shows him hospitality. Anything in the first um, 20 verses that you want to hit before we get to the main climax of this chapter? Yep. Yep. Yes. Yep. Yep. Raised up in Canaan with Canaanite thinking. They had gotten those things. So yeah, I think both the father-in-law and this older man are going to be a contrast in hospitality to what is about to happen with the men of Gibeah. Bob? Yeah. Actually, that's a really good uh, keep that story in mind. We're going to come to it because this is a replay of that story. Okay. Anything else? Okay. So Judges 19, and basically through the end of the chapter, so they're the Levite and the concubine and the servant and the old man are all together, and they're dining together. And then at this point, this is when the men of the city come to the house, and they want the old man to send the Levite out so that they can have their way with him. They refuse. He refuses. I think this is part of that hospitality thing. You can't do that. But he offers his daughters, and then the Levite shoves out the concubine, and they have the way with her all night until she falls down at the door. So what here kind of stood out to you? Again, it's a horrible, horrible chapter. Just the again, I think the most vile part of humanity and what it can lead to without God's principles. Yeah. Yeah, and the assumption from a lot of people I've come in contact with is that everything in this Bible is good. Like we're supposed to emulate everything of the characters, and that's actually almost the very opposite of what the Bible is for. Most of the characters in the Bible show people's faults and what you're not supposed to do, and the warnings and stuff like that. And so it's because this is in the Bible does not mean God is saying, yes, this is totally fine. It's saying, like, I think it's a warning. Be warned, you may get this point if you don't watch it. Be horrified. Look at your actions because your actions will lead to this, and society will lead to this if you don't watch out. So, yes, I've run into that as well. Good. What else? Yeah. Yep. So not at all to justify it, but hospitality is a little bit. Um, it's a it's it's a little bit more than just our modern sense of hospitality of just having people over. It's like you are protecting this person. You are making sure nothing bad happens to this person. Yes, but that was like one of the highest like honors. Like you were a horrible human being, which I think you are too if you do the other. But that's just the way the culture looked. I mean, was you have even nowadays in the Middle East, you have some stories about kind of our um, with our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan of people who took in soldiers that were wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan, and then the Taliban or other people look for them and they won't allow them. Like they'll give up anyone, but not them because they had taken them in as guests. And yeah, and I think this also plays to how low of a view that men at this time thought of, and this men of this moral fortitude that thought of women just in general. They were barely above slaves, basically, and slaves were at that time property that could walk, and that's how it was viewed. That's just how it was, and that was not, and I would say that's not even just Israel. That's the entire ancient world at this time. That's just the view of women and slaves and the whole thing, and it's moral reprehensible, and it's not what God had planned whatsoever. Yeah, yes, yes. I think it was more of women are less than men. I'll throw out whatever woman so that me and my guest are safe. And it's a sacrifice. It's a human sacrifice to the God of their desire. That's what it is. It's a human sacrifice, which have we seen that before? And so I think that's what you're supposed to look at. Is they're sacrificing human beings, women, for the sake of their own desires, their safety. So, Roger? Yes, 100%. And I'm going to pull some more similarities like to today and this a little bit later on. But yes, 100%. I think so. I think, and I will just say this for right now. We need to not look at this and be like, oh man, this is horrible. I can't believe nothing would happen. Like I would never think any of this would ever happen. Like you don't know how close someone is, and we're going to see how far in the next chapter. We're going to see how far this is from Joshua's day. It's not long. It's not long at all. So we need to be very, very, very careful. Uh, yeah, there's nothing new under the sun, and if we know anything from the Bible, it doesn't take long for people to just become deranged in immorality. What else? Anything else? Well, okay, we'll go through this. Let me know if you have anything else. And we've mentioned this several times. What is the story? What is like a copy of the story? Sodom and Gomorrah. It is a replay of Sodom and Gomorrah. It has almost every characteristic of it. What are some similarities between Genesis 19 and Judges 19? Men wanting men, offering his daughter. They came to Lot's house. Yeah. Lot showed him hospitality when no one else showed them hospitality. They were beating on the door. Yep. Yep. They offered his daughters to women as sacrifice. Yes. Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah. Very good parallel there. What is the difference between Genesis 19 and Judges 19? Okay, there's judgment. I think. Yeah. What happens? What does the women get thrown out there, or what happens in Genesis 19? Yeah, because the guests are angels, and so God intervenes. Everybody's struck blind, and He tells them to get out of there. Where's the intervention here? I think that's what in the back of your mind, as a good Jewish Israelite who knows the Bible very well, and as Christians, we should know this. As you're reading this, especially for the first time, you should be like, okay, where's the God intervention? Where's the God intervention coming and bringing justice? It doesn't happen. I think that's supposed to leave you like, what's going on here? Like, what is it, where is God? How can He let such things happen? In the back of your mind. Yeah. Yep. And I think we're also like, what happened to Sodom? It was destroyed. If Gibeah is Sodom, what's going to happen to it? be destroyed. That's what we should think in the back of our mind. Also, I think this is also I think this is written during the time of Josiah. This is my there's a wide variety of opinion. It's definitely written sometime in the Kings. Josiah, sometimes some people say it's Hezekiah. But in Josiah is one of the last, I think the last, good king of Israel. And I think this is a warning. Hey, look out. This is where we're headed. If you don't turn, we are going to become just like this. And the people of the king's time of Israel were doing some of the same things as we see in Judges. Warning, what will happen if we don't turn, if we don't become more spiritually minded and act like and do what God says and God commands, we will turn out just like this, and we will be destroyed too. I think that's part of it. Does it seem like the Levite cares what is being done to his concubine wife? Does it seem like from it that he is like just inside, just waiting, just can't sleep at all, or it kind of seems like he went back in, partied all night, and then slept well, and then when it was time for him to wake up, he was like, get up. Just no compassion whatsoever. And like we've seen many times, especially Samson, with his wife, no one cares about the woman. They only care about their individual needs, their power, their prestige, whatever. Nobody actually cares about the woman. The Levite, like I said before, is making a sacrifice. So the Levite was supposed to be making sacrifices to God. That was part of their job. But instead, this Levite is making human sacrifices to his own desires. And people are very much doing the same today. That is what abortion is, like plain and simple. That is what abortion is. It's a human sacrifice to my own desires. I don't want to ruin my life by just ruining the plan I have and having fun, so I am going to kill this baby. The human sacrifice to my own desires. And we have millions every year. That's why I'm saying don't think this is not happening, just in a different form today. How did Israel get to a place where this is happening? How could a people who just not very long ago was with Joshua and Moses, and they were conquering the land, how could they get from that to this place where this is part of it? Wait. What did you say? They abandoned their God. Good.
I think we've seen it over and over through the cycles that they've gone through, and it seems like the bottom of these cycles gets lower and lower.
100%. Any other thoughts? Yeah. They didn't wipe out the people so that they couldn't be a negative influence. And then they allowed those people to be an influence on them, and they participated in their way of thinking. They began to think in the way that they were thinking. And I think this is the progression of idolatry. The last two chapters, so last week, was Israel serving and making idols. And this is what idolatry will lead to. It should be a blatant warning of what society will look like when people follow their own eyes instead of God and what God sees as the best. And this is a couple weeks ago I talked about the two trees, the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. That is the decision that you have to make. Am I going to choose to follow what God says, even though it may look not as pleasing to the eye, or I'm going to choose what looks good to me or what gets me ahead? And this is what happened. This is the end. This is the death that follows when everyone in society follows what is good in their own eyes. Yeah. Kyle? Yep. Yeah. 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 100%. Josh?
This is what you get when you steal his Book of Solomon is supposed to be the wisest thing that ever lived. Before that done with king. This is what you get when you follow that stuff.
100%. And I don't think that we should think this is like just a big, like this happens in very small steps, but it happens in very small steps very quickly. So it's not going to be a big thing. It starts with people not being hospitable, and then people being a little selfish, and then people, I won't do what's good for other people. I'm going to do what's good for me, and then a bunch of small steps that happen very quickly, and you end up here. It happens really quickly, but it's a lot of small steps. It's not like suddenly going to rape and murder. Uh, Yeah, 100%. So after he finds his concubine, he picks her up, throws her around the back of his donkey, and then takes her and cuts her up and sends the body parts out to the other tribes. What is the purpose of this? Sorry, Mike, go ahead. You're the first one I heard. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 You want to have something else? Is what? Their depravity? Yes. Yes. Yeah. 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 Don't worry too much. This is a call to war. So we have a few instances in history where something like this happens, and it's a call to war. It's you're going to this is un this is not right. I This is basically a call to war. The question is, and we've already looked at that. What is the purpose of the call to war? Why are they calling it to war? And I think especially so. We'll just introduce chapter 20 real quick because it definitely continues on. So everyone kind of comes out, and everyone rises up from each of the tribes, and they says, tell us, how did this evil happen? And notice what the Levite says in verse 4. And the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and says, I came to the Gibeah that belongs to Benjamin, I and my concubine, to spend the night. And the leaders of Gibeah rose against me and surrounded the house against me by the night. And they meant to kill me, and they violated my concubine, and she is dead. Who is he concerned about? He is not concerned about, like, how dare they do this to this poor woman. It is, how dare they do this to me? There is no concern. This is a call to war, not for the sake of someone innocent being slain. This is a call to war because my honor was hurt. These people rose up against me, and this is the what he really cares about. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. It's about vengeance, not justice. This is what happens when there's no justice. I'll put one thing: is the woman dead before the Levite gets to her? The woman is alive when, yeah, the concubine. So yeah, so I mean it's disputed. Was she dead the morning before? But it sounds like that she was alive to some extent, and then he chops her up. Um, it it's I again I think this is I kind of doubt that she was already dead when he chopped her up, and distributed those pieces everywhere. And again, this is getting back to the depravity of Israel.
I don't think, though, we could go so far as to say that this all happened because of him. You know, this man married her. I mean, he took her as his wife. And she was a concubine, but he took her as his wife. She left him. He went after her. He wanted to get back to do his duty with the Lord. And that was his purpose for going back. He overextended his stay longer than he intended to. And these things happen because of the conditions of the people in Israel that kind of exacerbated his faults. I agree. He did have faults. I think they all have faults. And it's borne out in the story. But I think we need to understand that what did he do? And ask it like that.
Well, I think you could definitely do a lot better than the Levite did. um, yeah, sending out the innocent wife to be sacrificed for your own sake.
He didn't send her out there.
Yeah, he did. He sent
No,
her.
his host did.
I'm pretty sure he sent her out. Um, 25. The man will not listen, so the man seized his concubine, and made her go out to them. It was the man who sent out the concubine. Um,
I was under the impression that host did it just like Lot did.
yeah, no, it was the man. He seized his concubine and he sent her out. So, and I don't think this Levite was a godly man whatsoever. If you can, and being a Levite doesn't mean you're a God person. You can see that from the last couple chapters when they were serving idols. Real quick.
Somewhere in the midst, don't you see that the fact that it was sent out to all the tribes of Israel is a wake-up call that you need to have unity
Yeah,
and not to do anything,
yeah,
some kind of
yeah. And yeah, I think that's what it is. And we'll see that next time even more. So finish up chapter 20 and 21, and then we'll get to review some things you learned, that kind of stuff. Become prepared for that. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it a lot.